We are talking about my friend Megan Basham's new book, Shepherds for Sale. Shepherds for Sale. We had her on the show. My goodness, did that episode take off on YouTube, by the way. Go watch it. Megan is a warrior. She is exposing all of the fault lines, to quote Vodi Basham, in big evangelicalism. In fact, Vodi Basham has endorsed this book. I had an early copy to it. Now I have the actual book. There's so much to talk about here. I mean, Twitter, X, whatever, for the last 2 weeks has been a big flaming pile of poop in mudslinging and poop slinging at Megan Basham. And who's doing all the slinging? Well, all of the members and beneficiaries of Big Eva, of course. Big evangelicalism. We call them institutional managers, okay? But the best phrase is big evangelicalism. There is so much to talk about in this book. I just want to talk about one of her chapters today on the pro-life movement and how many of our evangelical betters don't seem to actually care that much about the unborn. They certainly don't really seem to be all that excited or grateful that Roe versus Wade got overturned. They seem more somber and mournful and sad that Roe v. Wade got overturned, while they give one little lip service to the fact that, oh, but I am pro-life. I am pro-life. Don't worry, I'm pro-life. Make sure you bring me to your gala. Make sure you give me that speaking check. Make sure that I'm still invited to the Gospel Coalition conference and writing articles at Christianity Today. No, I'm super pro-life, but also I'm so sad that Roe v. Wade got overturned. And they seemed to do more to attack pro-life Christians than they did to celebrate the overturning of Roe versus Wade. There is so much in this book. It's highly disturbing. Let's get into it. What is happening right now in the response to Megan's book, is more important than anything happening at the grand old party and the Republican National Committee right now, because it is our job as the church to hold the line against evil, to promote righteousness, to establish righteousness, okay? And to be a bulwark between evil and the next generation. And instead, what most of our evangelical leaders have been doing for decades, and certainly the last 20 years, is carry water for that agenda than they have done to oppose it. Megan Basham's book, Shepherds for Sale. We're going to talk about some interesting things today. Buckle up. Welcome to the Seth Gruber Show. So thank you guys for coming. Welcome to the show today. Listen, there's a lot I want to talk about here. You really need to read the whole book, okay? I've been texting with Megan, encouraging her, praying for her. You need to be praying for her. I have never seen evangelical leaders. I call them our evangelical betters, institutional managers, whatever you call them. They're not Christian leaders. Just don't call them that. I've never seen them like so mobilized and coordinated ever. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, they are so freaked out about this book. Gavin Ortland, you know the Ortland family? Was it like Dane Ortland? All these are the big Ortland, big evangelical institution of a family. I mean, that guy spent like the first 7 days of the first week of August, like drafting essays on Twitter about why you should not read this book. Okay, because she mischaracterized me. She took me out of context. I mean, even like people like Warren Cole Smith, who's been like a great voice on worldview stuff and writing for, I believe, the Chuck Colson Center for Worldview, actually. He's like out there writing a whole essay on how, you know what this book is really about? It's about Trump. That's like all of Big Eva. Again, what does that mean? It means institutional managers, okay? It means that they have big conferences, book deals, titles, major multi-million-dollar evangelical institutions and organizations. And what Megan's revealing here is like, actually, a lot of those people and a lot of those institutions and organizations that you thought you could trust, there's actually like dark money going through different institutions to eventually end up in evangelical organizations to influence them. Okay, like it's just like so shocking. There's so much to talk about in this book. But I do want to focus on some of her findings and I think some of her commentary that is very, very important as it pertains to the pro-life issue. Okay, obviously that's my primary lane, and I think the overturning of Roe versus Wade, like COVID, kind of showed who's who in the zoo, if that makes sense, to borrow a phrase from my friend Victor Marx. I think the overturning of Roe, like COVID, I mean, really the tyrannical, political, unjustified response to a cough is what I should have said, really showed who's who in the zoo, okay? And there's a few figures I want to focus on. You'll know most of their names. You might not know one or two of them, but they're all major evangelical authors, pastors, executive directors, presidents of institutions, best-selling authors, et cetera, who have been recognized as major evangelical voices for a long time. And their silence in the weeks following the overturning of Roe versus Wade, or their very strangely somber tone when Roe v. Wade got overturned is so telling in what we mean by Big Eva. Okay. And so there's a chapter in Megan's book that I encourage you to go by. Okay. On the, specifically on the pro-life movement. It's called Hijacking the Pro-Life Movement. Okay. And I want to address some of the figures in this fight. These are evangelical betters' response to Roe v. Wade getting overturned tells you everything you need to know. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that maybe more than any other issue, obviously she talks about climate change, she talks about critical race theory, okay, she talks about BLM stuff. There's so much good stuff. But we're talking about baby murder, like slaughtering babies, okay, like abortion. Like, if you're not angered enough by that as a Christian to mobilize against it, to celebrate victories against the abortion behemoth, abortion leviathan, Moloch, that tells me everything I need to know about you. It's the litmus test of the country, and it's the litmus test of the church about what we're willing to tolerate. And that's why I want to focus in on it, okay? Have you ever heard of Karen Swallow Prior? Some people call her the notorious Karen Swallow Prior. She's an idiot. And by that, what I mean actually is she's very smart and cunning. And she's evil. is what I mean by that. Okay, is that she cares more about Christianity with a little liberalism. You know, she likes her Christian drink spiked with liberalism. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, she wants to order, you know, a round of syncretism. She really likes that drink. It's very tasty to her. Because when Christianity rubs up against liberalism, she picks liberalism. And there's more about her that we don't have time to get into. Like in what there's some weird things she's been involved in smearing like friends of mine, like airing things and releasing documents that she was given in privacy and then claiming that she didn't do it. Like there's some other stuff behind Karen Swallow Prior that's very, very disturbing. But to focus in on the pro-life issue and on abortion. Now, who is Karen Swallow Prior? Well, she's a best-selling author. She's a columnist at Religion News Service, okay? And probably most interestingly of all is her long-standing relationship with the Southern Baptist Church, and as well as I'm fact-checking this right now, the seminary, I believe, Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. Now, she left in 2023, but she was at Southeastern Seminary, Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, for a long, long time. And her evangelical bona fides are well established. And she wrote this very strangely somber article in the New York Times when Roe v. Wade got overturned. And again, to really get the whole treatment on this, you have to get Megan's book. And she focused on how you know, women choose abortion in America, you know, not because of like bigotry or, you know, that they want orgasms without responsibility, or a culture of death, or radical feminism. No, the reason that women choose abortion in America, you know, it's because America is not feminist enough and doesn't provide enough entitlement programs. That's why. If Big Daddy government was just a little fatter, then women wouldn't choose to kill their kids. That's like kind of like what you come away with reading the article. Here's what she writes in the New York Times. By the way, let me say this once again. There's a reason why the New York Times asked Karen Swallow Prior to write for them and not Rosario Butterfield. Okay, I'll just leave that there. She writes, legalized elective abortion was the consolation prize given to women in 1973 for the centuries of inequality and oppression that stemmed from their sin of not being men. She says, it does take a village to become who we are. Thankfully, America's romance with radical autonomy and rugged individualism is cooling. Roe v. Wade gave our nation some of the most liberal abortion laws in the industrialized world and a high rate of abortion compared with that of many other industrialized countries, in no small part because of our individualist cultural and economic ethos. But then she finishes the article with this line. She says, we can do better than asking women to choose between their children and themselves. We can do better than asking women to choose between their children and themselves. What? No, we're just asking you not to kill your babies. We're asking you not to kill your kids. She later wrote on Twitter in regards to the overturning of Roe. She said, our work now is just starting. We must help support moms, dads, and babies. We must support moms and dads, right? Our failure is that we haven't been helping them enough. It's like imagine like slavery ends. And what Karen Swallow Prior would probably write in the New York Times. We have to subsidize the salaries of plantation owners. We're not doing enough for those who brutalized, whipped, and enslaved black men, women, and children in the South. If we really want to prove how anti-slavery we are, we would have entitlement programs for plantation owners. It's like, that's a weird take. You have to wonder how pro-life some of these people really are, right? So strangely somber and hardly celebratory, Karen Swallow Prior suggests that we cannot adequately celebrate the death of Roe v. Wade unless we're doing something to care for moms and dads who would otherwise kill their kids. Right? We need big daddy government to essentially subsidize the abortion mindset. That's what she's saying. If only poor moms and dads had more money from the government, then they wouldn't kill their babies. I'm not sure if that's true, actually. I'm not saying that there's no economic aspect to the abortion debate. Naturally, there is. But would the same parents who kill their unborn babies, would those same parents use economic hardship as a justification to kill their toddlers? And I think we would all say no. I think most of the moms and dads who kill their babies through abortion would not kill their toddlers, would not drown their toddlers or give them some chemical in their cereal to kill them, okay? But they will do that with their unborn children. So there is a dehumanizing mindset in the minds of too many American families that treat the killing of unborn babies as healthcare or as a necessary evil. Maybe they don't believe it's good, but it's necessary and needs to remain legal. Imagine saying that you can't adequately celebrate the Emancipation Proclamation unless you're cutting government checks to former plantation owners who don't know how to operate without slaves, right? It's just an economic thing. It's like, no, that's obviously not the core root issue. This is what I mean when I said when Christianity rubs up against liberalism, Karen Swallow Prior chooses liberalism. What do I mean by that? She supports the kind of entitlement programs and big daddy government subsidies that every lib supports, and they believe that this is the way to establish human flourishing. Not the church exercising ministries of mercy and loving the poor and the disenfranchised and the victimized at the local level. But, big daddy government in D.C., right, who cares nothing for the common man in small town America. He's going to be the one to really solve this problem. By the way, in this article, the New York Times, which, remember, is Karen Swallow Prior's response to the overturning of Roe versus Wade, she says nothing in the entire article about maybe God's plan. I don't know. Have you ever heard of that? Like having fathers provide for their wives and their children? Like maybe, how about perhaps policies that incentivize families to stay together? Policies that help build up the family rather than the government. Like God's thing, in the beginning of the world, right? Like this thing called a family, and like be fruitful and multiply, and like fathers should be providers and protectors, and they should like raise children together. Like, wow. Oh, shocker. Of course, the family is in decline. The family is hurting in America. Nearly 40% of all pregnancies are babies born to unmarried moms and dads outside of the context of marriage. That means we're approaching half of America's born babies don't have a married mother and father. What we need is stronger marriages and stronger families. We don't need a bigger government through social welfare policies that have decimated the family in America. And look no further, by the way, than Lyndon Baines Johnson. Lyndon Baines Johnson, right, the guy who said, I'll have those Negroes voting Democrat for the next 200 years. Yeah, so that guy, LBJ, right, whose policies incentivize fatherlessness in the black home. You know what I'm talking about, right? With the Great Society Act, with this policy of giving black mothers a check from Big Daddy government only if daddy wasn't in the home. So there was an incentive to have single mother households because it meant, free money. The same kind of policies that have decimated the family in America are the kind of policies that Karen Swallow Prior says we need to be supporting if we're really pro-life. That's our job, is to have more of that, not more of the church being the church at the local level or policies that build up the family rather than decimate it. On Twitter, on November 25th, 2020, here's what Karen Swallow Prior said. This is pretty hilarious. Okay. Here, what she's going to do is she's going to say that the same ethic that drives you to not want to slaughter babies in the name of radical feminism is the same ethic that should drive you to wear a face diaper. So to be really pro-life means to wear 3 masks like Fauci asked you to. That's what it means to be pro-life. She says, to think what we ask a woman with an unwanted pregnancy to sacrifice to give her child life, to think of that. And yet many of us won't even wear a little piece of cloth to potentially save the ill and infirm. Incredible. So wear a mask, you stupid pro-lifers, or you don't love your neighbor and you actually don't care about innocent, vulnerable life because don't you want to save the unborn? Then you should want to save people who will get a COVID cough if you don't wear the stupid face diaper. By the way, Karen Swallow Prior has said nothing since that post and since the science has come out showing that wearing these stupid face diapers do absolutely nothing to prevent you from getting a COVID cough or to protect those around you from giving them a COVID cough. Just a little bit of evidence for this, by the way. The Center for Evidence-Based Medicine at Oxford University wrote as far back as 2010 that masks prevent no significant effect in interrupting the spread of an influenza virus in the general population or within the ranks of healthcare workers. Why am I comparing it to influenza? Because all of these viruses are invisible and small, and they go right through a stupid cloth or surgical mask, okay? Norway's Institute for Public Health says that masks are so ineffective as to have minimal effect on the infection rate of the general population. The New England Journal of Medicine told us as recently as May 2020 that, quote, we know that wearing a mask outside healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. And they said, quote, in many cases, the desire for widespread masking is a reflexive reaction to anxiety over the pandemic. A study from Japan concluded that face mask use has not been demonstrated to provide benefit in terms of getting colds, and that a larger study is needed to establish non-inferiority of no mask use. A 2010 study by Cambridge University found there is little evidence to support the effectiveness of face masks to reduce the risk of infection. A study from Oxford Clinical Infectious Diseases found that, quote, there is no evidence that cloth masks provide protection from the transmission of pathogens when used repeatedly without adequate sterilization. And a Danish study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine in November 2020 found, quote, no statistically significant effect of high-quality medical face masks against COVID infection in a community setting. So there you go. There's just like 7 highly established medical institutes and and institutions saying that the stupid face diaper does nothing. But Karen Swallow Prior says you're not really pro-life if you don't wear the face diaper, right? You apparently you hate the unborn. You're not willing to protect innocent life if you won't wear 3 Fauci masks. So that's who Karen Swallow Prior is. She has posted no form of celebration in any meaningful way to the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Her immediate knee-jerk response was, we have to do more for big daddy government war buck social welfare programs if we're really going to be pro-life. The same kind of policies that have actually harmed marriage and the family in America and brought about the mess of abortion in the first place. We need more of that, says Karen Swallow Prior, if we're really pro-life. One of our evangelical betters. Okay, so these are just some of the people that you learn about. I think they're true colors in Megan's new book, Shepherds for Sale, How Evangelical Leaders Traded the Truth for a Leftist Agenda. What about Beth Moore? Oh, Beth Moore. Guess what? Beth Moore also responded to the overturning of Roe versus Wade by scolding evangelicals for not doing enough to help women. That's always their response. Have you noticed this? Roe gets overturned and pro-lifers need to do more to love and support women. It's like, I thought that's what we were doing for like 50 years in the pro-life movement. I thought that's what we were doing with like the 2,700 pregnancy resource centers in the country that most churches don't even support. Why don't you address that? So, by the way, Beth Moore responded to Karen Swallow Prior's mournful celebration to the overturning of Roe v. Wade on Twitter, and here's what Beth Moore said. She said, yes, step up, church. Take responsibility for the fact that pro-life is either pro-all life, which is in step with the truth of the gospel, or pro-some life, which for many is in step with political expediency. She said, unborn, born, babies, girls, women need immense support, compassion, and care. Okay, yes. Sure, we should be supporting and caring for people. But that's the role of the church. We should be caring for people. But that's what the pro-life movement has done for 50 years. Her response is not to celebrate the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but to say, you Christians haven't done enough. Coming from the woman who you'll discover in just 1 second tried very hard to stop you from voting for Trump in 2020 and in 2016 because he's a big, mean orange man and you should not vote for him, which means you'd be voting for Hillary Clinton in 2016 or Joe Biden in 2020 or not voting at all. Guess what? There's no other options. If you weren't going to vote for Trump to try to overturn Roe v. Wade, then you were either voting for Hillary in 2016, Biden in 2020, or not voting at all. She worked very hard to smear Christians who wanted to vote for Trump because of their recognition of the significance and the political possibility of overturning Roe versus Wade. And yet she's going to lecture us here about how the church is not doing enough and we need to step up and take responsibility for all life. Yeah, Beth Moore, you can step up and take responsibility for all life by starting with the unborn, the only one whom it is legal to kill, the only ones who it is legal to kill in America, the only innocent human being that is legal to kill. And you can prove how much you're willing to protect innocent unborn life by voting for the only candidate in 2016 who gave us, Christians, the only possibility of legally ending abortion or overturning Roe versus Wade. But you didn't do that, Beth Moore. So you can shut up. You can shut up and stop lecturing us. It's disgusting, but this is some of the things you learn about in Megan Basham's new book. Megan makes the excellent observation. She says, after claiming to be pro-life for her entire 40 plus years in ministry, Beth Moore had this and this alone to say about the end of Roe. She has never publicly acknowledged it since. That is crazy. Beth Moore, who many of you listening to this used to read her books or Bible studies. I hope you don't anymore. This and this alone was her only public response to the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Step up, church. Take responsibility for the fact that pro-life is either pro-all life or pro-some life. Who is she attacking? I don't understand. I don't know pro-life Christians, not serious ones, who are pro-some life. You know what she's doing here, right? Do you see it? She's saying that if you don't, what? Support the kind of policies that Karen Swallow Pryor is talking about, then you are pro-some life. So if you don't support a leftist social welfare big government state, nanny state, then you're pro-some life. So in other words, become a liberal. And then you're truly pro-life. That's actually what Beth Moore is saying. Remember, this hot take from Beth Moore was her replying to Karen Swallow Pryor, right, on Twitter about how we need to do more by supporting these kinds of things. When Karen Swallow Pryor said, our work is now just starting, we must help and support moms, dads, and babies. What does help mean? Because to my knowledge, the pro-life movement, pregnancy resource centers, have been helping women free of charge and providing all of these resources at the local level for decades for free. So what is she talking about when she says we have to help support moms and dads? She means the kind of policies that she refers to in her stupid New York Times article. That's what Beth Moore is replying to when she says that some of you are pro-some life. Pro-some life. So support mine and Karen's liberal policies, and then you're really pro-life, okay? Yeah, so what does stepping up mean? Does it mean the 2,700 pregnancy resource centers that have prenatal care, STI testing, STI treatment, ultrasound, childbirth classes, labor coaching, midwife services, lactation consultation, nutrition consulting, social work, abstinence education, parenting classes, material assistance, and post-abortion counseling? Does it mean the Catholic Church, the single most influential pro-life institution in the United States that makes the largest financial, institutional, and personal commitments to charitable causes of any private source in the United States, including AIDS ministry, healthcare, education, housing services, care for the elderly, disabled, and immigrants at the local level? Is that what you mean? No, you don't want to acknowledge that a lot of that care and support is already being provided, do you, Beth Moore? Because then Christians might care more about loving their neighbor at the local level and actually being the hands and feet of Jesus, and taking that commandment to love their neighbor on their own shoulders instead of prostituting that commandment to the federal government so they can feel really good about themselves. And I think that's what you mean, actually, Beth Moore. But remember, Beth Moore also took time in 2020 to attack and smear Christians who supported Trump. And she said that they were dangerous. Listen to this, that Christians supporting Trump in 2020 were dangerous. And that we were being seduced. We were being seduced by Trumpism. Trumpism. Yeah, that's what she said. Here's the tweet. She said, I do not believe these are the days for mincing words. She said, I'm 63 and a half years old, and I have never seen anything in these United States of America I found more astonishingly seductive and dangerous to the saints of God than Trumpism. This Christian nationalism is not of God. Move back from it. Move back from it. That's what she said. Well, what does she mean by Trumpism? But first, thank you to our friends and sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show, Every Life Diaper. Every Life Diaper. Every life matters. And most of the baby companies and diaper companies like rhetorically support on social media the abortion industry, and some of them pay for their employees to go to pro-abortion states to kill their kids. Woke capitalism is very dangerous, and it is injecting steroids into the culture of death. It needs to be destroyed. The way you do that is you fight with your wallet. Fight with your wallet by getting your diapers at everylife.com. Everylife.com, promo code Seth10. Seth10 for 10% off your first order, and let them know that we sent you, and then you support the Seth Gruber Show, the White Rose Resistance, and you help build a culture of life through a marketplace of people who fight with their dollars to defund and bankrupt woke corporatism and establish a conservative corporatism that values that which matters most. Babies, the next generation. Everylife.com, tell your nursery at your church, tell your pregnancy resource center, and tell your loved ones who are having babies to get their diapers at everylife.com, promo code Seth10. Thank you, Everylife, for supporting the Seth Gruber Show. That you were, voting for him? What does that mean? That you were telling fellow Christians, hey, Joe Biden is dangerous to marriage, to parental rights, to free speech, to the lives of the unborn, to religious freedom. And so, hey, I don't love Trump. I would have preferred a different option, but good Lord, between the two options, please vote for Trump. Maybe we can not kill babies. Right? Maybe. She said that's dangerous and seductive. Trumpism. You wanted to help get Trump elected? Ooh, you've been seduced. You've been seduced by Trump, and you're really dangerous. That's what Beth Moore said, by the way, in this tweet from 2020. By the way, I replied to her tweet at the time, and I said, smearing Christians who understand their duty to Jesus expands into the political sphere? Beth, if you believe that supporting a president who can help end the genocide of baby image bearers is more dangerous than the saints allowing the murder of babies, your moral compass is broken. That's what I tweeted back, and I stand by that today. I would tell Beth Moore, failure to put the defense of innocent babies at the top of your voting priorities proves that you do not have a biblical worldview. Full stop. Full stop, Beth Moore. But this is how excited Beth Moore and Karen Swallow Pryor were at the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Not excited at all. Pretty mournful, I would say. And turning around and shooting arrows at their own for not really being pro-life. You're just pro-some life unless you support my liberal nanny state. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. His name's Micah Edmondson. He's an author, pastor, and contributor to The Gospel Coalition, which is Tim Keller's brainchild, by the way. Here's what he said. He said, now that Roe is overturned, I pray that we will provide access to health care, child care, living wages, education, and job opportunities that will support the lives of people in desperate situations. How about, hey, Christians, get involved at the local level. Why don't you run the soup kitchens? Why don't you run facilities and counseling services for the mentally ill? Hey, Christians, why don't you start a pro-life ministry to be outside of abortion centers? Hey, why don't you provide housing for moms facing an unplanned pregnancy because the dad is a degenerate piece of human vermin and doesn't want to step up and support the woman he impregnated and his son or daughter? No. According to Micah Edmondson at the Gospel Coalition, you have to provide access to healthcare, childcare, living wages, education. Dude, he sounds like a lib. That's how every lib talks. They say you can't really be pro-life unless you're supporting these initiatives, which we say are the way to decrease the abortion rate. But the goal is not to decrease the abortion rate, it's to ban it. And the only way you can ban it is to make it illegal. And the only way you can make it illegal is to certainly not vote for Democrats. But he this is his response to the overturning of Roe v. Wade. In other words, the problem with the Carthaginians, I guess, was not primarily demonic or idolatry, like the child sacrifice and stuff. The primary problem was that Carthaginian leaders needed to rethink the welfare state and entitlement programs. Then the people would stop burning their children. Then they would stop burning their children. Thank you, Micah Edmondson at the Gospel Coalition. What a stupid hot take. He also wrote this. He said that may the Lord give grace to victims of rape whose pregnancies are daily reminders of the worst violation. May the Lord give grace to women whose lives are at risk in their pregnancies and to medical providers wondering if they can intervene to save their lives. Lord, have mercy. So firstly, I hope you just understand what this Gospel Coalition and pastor just said. He absorbed the legacy news media and liberal establishment's lie that they peddled for months after the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which was that now that some states have banned abortion, women with high-risk pregnancies who might have to have a cesarean section to save their life or an ectopic pregnancy will not be able to get adequate health care to save mom's life because such intervention or care would end the life of the baby and would therefore be defined as an abortion. So therefore it would be illegal to save the lives of pregnant women with an ectopic pregnancy. So Republicans and pro-life Christians want pregnant moms to die that have ectopic pregnancies or severe pregnancy complications, because that's how pro-life they are. They want to sacrifice the lives of moms. That's literally what he's echoing. This freaking idiot at the Gospel Coalition says Lord, give grace to women whose lives are at risk because of their pregnancies, and to medical providers wondering if they can intervene to save the mom's life. Oh, I don't know. Can I perform a salpingectomy to remove the baby from the fallopian tube? I don't know. That might be an abortion. That's never been the case. Even in states where abortion was illegal before Roe versus Wade, you could still intervene in an ectopic pregnancy because intervention is not an abortion. Because if you don't do anything in an ectopic pregnancy, the mom and the baby die. So it's better to act to save one life than not act and lose two lives. That's so simple, Mika Edmonson. You idiot. Literally talk about carrying water for the liberal establishment. Talk about carrying water. Talk about Big Eva. Jeez Louise. When Christianity rubs up against liberalism, we got to pick liberalism. Oh, sorry, I should add some nuance to that. Not usually a word I like. Only in regards to politically incorrect evils. If they're politically incorrect evils, then you'll choose liberalism. If they're politically correct evils, then you'll choose Christianity. Or I guess the other way around. Politically correct evils would be abortion. So if they're politically correct evils, well then, we might need to side with liberalism. But if we can get attaboys and accolades and applause from the culture for our stances on issues, then if it aligns up with Christianity, great. Mika Edmonson, what an idiot. This is his response to the overturning of Roe v. Wade getting overturned. Something that Christians had been praying for over 50 years. Well, I'm sorry, 50 years, but we had states that had legalized abortion as early as 1970. Finally, it gets overturned, 49 and a half years, okay? And this author, pastor, and writer at the Gospel Coalition says, "Oh, Lord, have mercy on women." How about thank you, God? This is amazing. Not once did he ever praise the overturning of Roe v. Wade, celebrate it, or acknowledge it as a good thing. By the way, regarding the Gospel Coalition, where Mika Edmonson writes at, this is something Megan points out in her book, none of the nine articles that the Gospel Coalition ran about Roe's downfall in the month that Dobbs was decided even mentioned the former president's role. Of the 9 articles the Gospel Coalition ran within the month that Roe v. Wade was overturned, none of them even acknowledged President Trump's role in overturning Roe. Now listen, if you listen to my show, you know that I rip Trump whenever he deserves it. Okay, I'll rip in a new one whenever he deserves it. He's been abandoning the unborn, softening his language. I think actually completely abandoning the pro-life cause. It's highly infuriating, and I frequently call it out. But dude, I mean, just credit to where credit's due. Like, God used him with the 3 Supreme Court appointments to overturn Roe v. Wade. Because Roe only got overturned in a 5-4 decision, which means it only got overturned because of all 3 Supreme Court appointments from that mean tweening orange man. Why can we not acknowledge that? Why? Because big evangelicalism wants to be culturally relevant. That's why. Lastly, Russell Moore. And we're just talking about a few figures here from her book and from her chapter on hijacking the pro-life movement. Russell Moore, I sometimes tire of going after him, but he just deserves it. It's like, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I've said it before. It's like Jean-Ralphio in Parks and Rec. He's the worst. He's the worst. He's the worst. Okay? Russell Moore was a public theologian for Christianity Today. He was the president of the ERLC, which is the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, which is the political arm of the Southern Baptist Convention, which is the largest Protestant denomination in America. Okay. He's now the editor-in-chief at Christianity Today. Okay. His response, or lack thereof, to the overturning of Roe versus Wade is also very, very revealing. At the time, he was a public theologian for Christianity Today. It's important that you know that Russell Moore was the media's go-to expert on evangelicals and the pro-life effort to fight abortion. Megan Basham rightly points out that Russell Moore was the key primary moral voice at evangelicalism's flagship magazine, Christianity Today. In other words, his primary responsibility was to write about such monumental developments in the culture, what they mean, why they're important, etc. And before we get to his response to Roe's death, to the overturning of Roe, by the way, just a reminder, Megan Basham reminds us of something important. She says when Trump was indicted for mishandling classified documents, Russell Moore was on Twitter tweeting immediately. And when the Southern Baptist Convention released a report on abuse that lambasted Russell Moore's denominational enemies, he had a nearly 1,500-word essay published within the space of an hour. What's the point? Russell Moore is not slow on the trigger, okay? He knows how to respond to things very quickly when they're monumental, when they're important. But for weeks and weeks after the most important legal decision that pro-life Christians have seen in their lifetime, Russell Moore had no essays, no podcasts, and nothing on social media. And by the way, this guy has been paid a lot of money for books that he's written on pro-life, Russell Moore, for conferences that he's attended. I went to Russell Moore's 2017 Evangelicals for Life conference just outside of DC in 2017. It was put on by the ERLC, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. And I think that guy was a woke idiot then, if I'm being perfectly honest. I don't know if I was aware of it in 2017, but he was. In fact, one of the people that spoke at Russell Moore's pro-life conference in 2017 was Eugene Cho. Eugene Cho was the former pastor of, I think it was called Quest Church in Seattle, an author, a writer, I believe, at the Gospel Coalition, and has sold books. And Eugene Cho got up there. I attended the conference and lectured pro-lifers, pro-life Christians, on how they weren't pro-life enough unless they were doing other issues, like caring for the immigrant, the poor. You know what they do, right? I've covered this in past on this podcast. Like, pro-life becomes like whole life. Like, literally, there are people who say, I'm not pro-life, I'm whole life. And that's how the progressives sneak in progressive policy prescriptions and ideas, because they know that if they can brand anything as a pro-life issue, it's easy to get weak evangelicals to support it. Because if you can borrow from the ethic that drives our opposition to child killing, you can animate Christians to support anything if you're able to force them to admit it's a pro-life issue. And so Eugene Cho at Russell Moore's conference gets up there and starts lecturing pro-lifers on how they need to do more to be truly pro-life. But what many of the conference attendees did not know is that Eugene Cho believes abortion should be legal. I have this in my book, The 1916 Project, by the way. go pre-order The 1916 Project, the1916project.com, or at Amazon. I have the receipts on this. Eugene Cho has written an article years ago about how he said, can we support women but maintain choice? Maintain choice. Keep abortion legal. So when a pro-choice pastor can lecture pro-lifers on how they're not pro-life enough, and Russell Moore has nothing to say about that, yeah, I'm going to question Russell Moore's pro-life bona fides. Okay, well, anyways, so that's a little bit about Russell Moore. For weeks after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the guy had nothing to say. When he finally did publish an essay, like Karen Swallow Prior and Beth Moore, who, by the way, he's good friends with, by the way, Russell Moore focused on social programs the church can get behind. There you go again. You have to support what all the libs support, expanding the size of the federal government to do the kind of work that the local church ought to be doing. And only in supporting that can you really be pro-life. Russell Moore mentioned nothing of marriage or, fathers. Nothing. Now, Megan Basham makes an important point. She points out that Russell Moore actually had commented on the Dobbs decision the week it was released, but he did so during an interview with Time Magazine that was released later, so we didn't know that it had happened at the time, okay? Again, this is Time Magazine, okay, not necessarily known as a magazine that is very friendly to Christians. Let's just put it that way, okay? And he was speaking at a conference when Time Magazine interviewed him. Super, super interesting. He was at the Faith Angle Forum, a high-status think tank convention where secular journalists interact with religious intellectuals, okay? And apparently he had given an interview to Time Magazine, interviewed by Molly Ball of Time. And this interview was published later, and this was the only response he had given within the week of the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And Molly Ball of Time Magazine asked Russell Moore if evangelicals were vindicated in having voted for Trump because he kept his promises in appointing pro-life justices. Russell Moore, in this interview with Time Magazine, this is his response, remember, in the week that Roe v. Wade got overturned, refused to give Trump any credit. And here's what he said to Time Magazine. He said, well, the author of the Dobbs case is a Bush appointee. The author of the Dobbs case is a Bush appointee. So Bush should get the credit and not Trump. That's basically what he's saying. Dude, you don't have to like Trump to just acknowledge that it was because of his 3 Supreme Court appointees that Roe v. Wade got overturned. Go back and listen to my old episodes. I think I've lost some donors recently for ripping Trump too much because they're afraid that I'm making people fearful to vote for him. And so I'm going to help Kamala Harris win in November or something like that, just because I want to make sure that Trump begins to fear losing the evangelical vote so that he'll get back in line and protect the unborn. I rip the guy whenever he deserves it. Russell Moore, you don't have to be Beth Moore, Trumpism, okay? Or like some Trump worshiper to just say, yeah, praise God how God used Trump to overturn Roe. What's wrong with you? But he can't because he is a hireling. He's a hireling. He's part of big evangelicalism. He's an institutional manager. And we know that Christianity, thanks to Megan's book, we know that Christianity Today and the ERLC, which Russell Moore has run both of them. Russell Moore has run both of them. He was the president of the ERLC, and now he's the editor-in-chief of Christianity Today. We know that they have received funding from big, stupid, population reductionist, neo-Malthusian billionaires who hate Christianity and want to influence evangelicalism for evil. We know that. Go get Megan's book. Russell Moore. Yeah, you are a hireling. That's why he can't give Trump any credit. Megan Basham says on this point, she says, Russell Moore ignores the fact that the other Bush appointee, John Roberts, did not sign on to the majority opinion. And actively lobbied for a much narrower ruling that would have left Roe v. Wade in place. Do you guys remember this? The Dobbs decision was 6-3. But then the court went further and said, should we go the whole way and fully overturn Roe v. Wade? That was a 5-4 decision. Do you know why? Because John Roberts left the conservative, quote unquote, wing of the court and joined the libs. Well, Russell Moore forgot to mention that. So Megan Basham says, meanwhile, all 3 of Trump's appointees did vote to overturn Roe completely. So if you're comparing Bush to Trump, Megan says the score would be Bush 1 for 2 and Trump 3 for 3. 3 for 3. Russell Moore, what a hireling. What a pathetic soy boy, weak man. What an evangelifish. Well, that's just a little bit we learned from Megan Basham's book, Shepherds for Sale, How Evangelical Leaders Traded the Truth for a Leftist Agenda. We just looked at the pro-life chapter. I could do whole episodes on this. You should go get the book. This woman has more testicles than nearly all of our evangelical male leaders combined. And she's taking the heat for it, believe me. So pray for her. Continue to order her book in bulk. Let's make this a New York Times bestseller. It already is, actually, but one that cannot be ignored. I am praying for Big Eva to collapse in on itself like a dying star and Christians to walk away from big evangelicalism and get back in the business of the local church, preaching the truth, engaging with these ideas. I would trust a local pastor who loves his sheep and the gospel now far more than I would Christianity Today or the Gospel Coalition, or ERLC or Together for the Gospel or Acts 29 or so many of the organizations that we used to look to for evangelical leadership. To learn this and more, go get Megan Basham's book now. Why did we do this? Because if the church cannot lead the way in standing for life, in establishing righteousness, in shepherding the people to do the works of the ministry, then no one else will. The direction of the country we hand our children, freedom, liberty, life, prosperity, religious liberty, is going to be determined by whether the church wakes up or not in these very dark and evil years. And when our evangelical leaders are not only silent, they're being used as tools to carry water for the culture of death and to mainstream secular progressivism, sometimes with an accompanying paycheck, then it needs to be called out and it needs to be exposed. Ephesians 5:11 says, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Megan Basham has done just that. Thank you guys for joining the show today. Head on over to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Give the show a rating and review. Subscribe at Rumble for if YouTube ever digitally assassinates me. If you want to join the White Rose Resistance, the fastest growing pro-life organization in the country, and support what we're doing to establish resistance chapters, to mobilize the church through leadership and training, to get engaged in like actual activism and public deeds that need to be done at the local sphere where God has placed you to make a difference in the country. I believe that if we win the culture back, it's going to be Christians being Christians at the local area where God has them, but all of us doing that simultaneously around the country. That's how the left has destroyed the culture. Go to thewhiterose.life, join us as an ally at $35 a month. And when you join us, you get your battle box in the mail, and you join our digital community with courses, curriculum, training, a pro-life masterclass, live calls. It's all for you because you're the solution. And at $70 a month, you join our book club. I think the next book we're reading is 10 books that screwed up the world and 5 others that didn't help. Great book. And we talk about it live on Zoom. And if the author's alive, sometimes I get the author to join us. And if you want to bring the groundbreaking documentary, The 1916 Project, to your church, go to the1916project.com, press host a screening, get your pastor or elders to host a screening at your church, and pre-order the book, please. The sales are going great. We want this to make a big media like public relations splash when the book comes out September 4th and the film comes out probably the first week of October. The1916project.com or on Amazon. Pre-order the book now. Until next time, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.